Jim Britt and Jim Lutz had a vision, and the Change Book series was developed. Welcome to the Change Book Radio Show with your hosts and personal coaches that'll show you how to bankroll your mind, Lawrence Pipkin and Rich Perry. Join Lawrence and Rich weekly as they interview the top co-authors from all over the globe who share their insights into self-empowerment with life-enhancing realizations that will touch every area of your life. We're live every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Rich Perry here, and I'm joined, as always, by Lawrence Pipkin, and you're listening to the Change Book Radio Show. Lawrence, how are we doing today on this beautiful Wednesday?
I'm doing awesome, and I want to say welcome to everybody, and we have a super guest today that we're totally excited about asking a bunch of questions to after reading his chapter in the Change Book. So I'm excited today, Rich.
Definitely. Well, I'm going to lead in with a brief bio for our guest, and we're going to welcome him to the show. Our guest today is Dr. Stephen Simpson. Dr. Stephen is calling in from the UK. You can find his chapter in Book 8 of the Change Book series, and it's called Get Lucky Now, The 7 Secrets for Abundant Health, Wealth, and Happiness. While working as a doctor in war-torn Africa and the deserts of Oman and the steppes of Kazakhstan, Stephen studied successful people and discovered that their good luck is not random. Now working as a mind coach and hypnotherapist on the world golf and poker tours, he uses these 7 secrets of lucky people to ignite peak performance in his clients. And we're proud and thankful to have Dr. Stephen calling in from the UK today. Dr. Stephen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, and I'd like to thank you both for welcoming me to your show, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Excellent. So real quick, just for the listeners who maybe haven't had a chance to read your chapter yet or any of your other books, tell us a little bit about your chapter, Get Lucky Now, and the 7 secrets that you list in your chapter.
Well, it's a chapter about luck, and that is the one word that all of my work focuses around. And it didn't always used to be like that. I mean, for the last 9 years, I've been a self-development coach, and people always ask you, well, what do you talk about? And I used to say, well, I think that what people want out of life is they want more health, wealth, and happiness. And you can put most people's aspirations into one of those buckets. And about 2.5 years ago, I was making one of my regular seminars, and I started to try and warm the audience up, and I said, how many people want to have greater health? And the hands would go up. How about wealth? And by wealth, I don't just mean money, I mean a rich life, happiness. And so, not surprisingly, everybody voted for at least two of those, and usually 3. And then I was just about to move on to the next section of my talk, and I never have any notes. And I just had an urge to say something a bit different. And I said, hold on a minute, how many people here would like to have more luck in their lives? And it's as if you could hear a pin drop. The atmosphere changed completely. There was silence. You could hear a pin drop. People were leaning forwards. And then it was like, yes. And that one word had done something magical. It was the first time I'd used it. And from that moment on, I knew that luck was going to be what I was going to talk about and work with on my clients. And it's been a pretty exciting journey, I can tell you.
Mm-hmm. Right on. So, and I was reading in your chapter, now these 7 secrets you mention in one of your videos on your website that, these aren't it's not something that you yourself developed. It's things that you have researched and you found throughout the course of your career, and you pretty much put them together. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I mean, I say up front, I am not the inventor of these 7 secrets. I wish I had been, but I haven't been around long enough to be that smart. And some of those secrets, I mean, they go back at least 3,000 years. So when I was working in all of these places, I was working as a medical doctor, by the way, but I was working with some incredibly successful people. And later in my career, I went more into human resources, and I became more of a manager than a doctor, and that had its advantages and disadvantages. But I spent a lot of time looking at successful people and profiling them and trying to think, well, what made this person so successful in their job, and they rose to the level of chairman of a multinational company and things like that. And I realized that it's not an accident. They get there by basically following these 7 secrets, even if they're not aware of what those secrets are.
I'm curious, was that your studies when you were studying these super successful people? Was that something that was in the role of your position, or was that just a personal interest because you wanted to be better and you wanted to serve others better, so you just kind of set out on your own to study these extremely successful people over the course of history, and then you started to see the similarities?
Well, it was both of those. It started because it was very much my role. I was working for a multinational corporation in Africa, and my job was simply to bring Western standards of healthcare into rural parts of Africa and communities where they just didn't have that access. And it wasn't by parachuting in a lot of doctors and laboratory technicians from the States or from UK or Australia. It was by using the people that were already there. And I worked in Angola for 7 years, and of course that country had been at civil war. And when a country's at war, sadly, one of the first things that start to crumble is the education system. And yet somehow the very best people managed to piece together some kind of an education, and they thrive despite their impoverished background. So my job was to build teams of these people. So I had to analyze what their qualities were, and perhaps more importantly, what was their potential? How far could they raise their game to step up into very demanding positions?
Wow, that's awesome. And what was it like being over there? I'm just curious because when I read that in your chapter, when I read it in your bio, and when you told me about it personally, I thought that what was it that brought you overseas into these areas? I'm curious.
Well, it's a real long story, which I won't bore you with. But I mean, I've always been fascinated by travel as well as working with people, and I love these countries. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed working in the Middle East and Africa and the former Soviet Union. They were all challenging assignments, but I guess that's the kind of person that I am. I frankly would wither if I was put into a head office environment. In fact, the last job that I did was that, and I think I did start to wither.
Well, that leads me to a question. Because you've led this life full of adventure and experiencing different cultures and the way that people react, and you've been able to develop this sense of how people can create their own luck. When you find yourself in these last 9 years as an empowerment coach, as somebody who is helping people with their performance, how do you continue to build that for yourself?
I practice what I preach. I always say to my clients, anything that we talk about or that I recommend or suggest to you, I do it myself. And I work on bringing more luck into my life. I work on these 7 secrets constantly. And because, I mean, that's a really good question. And this is the kind of questions that people ask. They say, okay, you're setting yourself up as the expert in luck. I say, well, no, I'm not setting myself up like that. I'm setting myself up as somebody who's studied lucky people, and I followed these things myself, and I'm happy to say that I've had a very successful life, and my role is to share them with you for you to use for whatever it is that you want to accomplish in your life.
Exactly. I think that's one thing that people can pick up automatically when self-created experts doesn't have the congruency with the words that they're saying. I think they can pick that up quite easily, and it makes it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I mean, that's a great comment, and I couldn't agree with you more. Sadly, we're a very overpopulated population of self-development coaches or whatever we call ourselves. And I think one prerequisite is that you, as you say, you have to have some competence and congruency. I mean, would you go to a financial advisor who couldn't manage his own investments? I don't think anybody would.
Exactly. And that actually brings me to that, because that brings it back to your chapter. And I love all the points. And both Rich and I are trained in NLP and somewhat in hypnosis. And so it makes a lot of sense to me, the goals, and, we help people build SMART goals, and the confidence is that esteem and that self-talk. And then making movies or visualizations is very important. Mindfulness these days seems to be very popular. Can you give us your consensus of what true mindfulness is?
True mindfulness is living totally in the now. And I know there are many different definitions, but that's the one that comes immediately to mind. And our generation is a privileged one because we live in abundance. Most of us live in the Western world. We have supermarkets open 24 hours a day, and it doesn't matter what the season is, we can get any kind of food we want, more or less. All we have to do is pay for it. But we're also disadvantaged because we are the internet generation, and of course that's brought us incredible benefits. But the price that we've had to pay is instant availability of ourselves and constant distractions that rapidly become habits or even obsessions and addictions. And I mean how important in our lives now are the constant texting, the constant emailing, the social media, the breaking news. Our brains never stop. I don't know if that's something that you could subscribe to.
Oh, 100%. And I love that you say in your chapter that basically multitasking is a fantasy, yet it seems to be the thing that everybody strives to be good at. And, our brains just don't operate that way. It's turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off. And so I think it's hard for people to understand that mindfulness is focusing on that one thing and being in the now or being in the moment. So I like that part of your chapter very, very much. And what do you tell your clients? What's the one technique that you find helps them over and over in them being more mindful?
Well, there are some simple things that you can actually switch some of these gadgets off. Of course, there's howls. Howls of anguish. Oh, no. And then they say, but don't you understand what my job is? Don't you understand that my clients expecting me to be available 24/7? And don't you understand that I'm working and I'm also a full-time mother with 3 children and a husband who needs more looking after than they do? Or, or I have a wife to support her or whatever. And they can't believe it. And so we have to calm things down a little bit and have a discussion about the importance of mindfulness, and that it won't happen on its own. In fact, if people really don't get it, and actually I'm glad to say that most people do, it comes as a shock first, but they pretty soon warm to it. But if they are having difficulty understanding how they can be mindful, I'll say, now look, a coach never tells a client not to do anything, but this is the one exception. And the reason it's an exception is because actually you have 100% ability to be mindful, because when you were born, you were totally mindful. And it was only when your conscious mind started to develop, your conscious mind started to think that it was running, only then did the mindfulness start to slip away because it had been stolen.
Mm-hmm. That brings me to something else, because I know that when I talk about meditation with people, the first thing that they say is, well, I can't clear my mind. And they think it's an all or nothing. And I think our generation is kind of that all or nothing. And when you say, that instant gratification or all these tech tools, it's kind of all or nothing all the time. And they don't give themselves the opportunity to have thoughts come in and acknowledge them and let them leave. They think that is a bad thing. So I know that you speak with your clients a lot about meditation. What are some helpful hints that you might have for them?
Well, I agree with what you've just said, Lawrence, and I'm sure some of our listeners will be teachers, and of course teachers are in the front line with this battle against mindfulness, because the reports that I get from them is that these kids are they're so used to these information overloads and gadgets and stuff that they literally have never really known how to sit quietly for a few minutes. So anyway, what I would say to people is, now look, the goal is for us to have a quiet, empty mind developed through meditation. But for most people, when they start to address mindfulness, this is going to be pretty much impossible for them. So then I would say, okay, if you can't have an empty mind, and I understand why not, then at least let us put some good thoughts in your mind rather than some of these other things that you're thinking about that are not going to be so helpful. And a quick way to ground somebody is say, okay, close your eyes. Now, the reason I'm asking you to close your eyes is that, funnily enough, people think better when their eyes are closed. Okay, now your eyes are closed. I want you to think of 3 different noises that you can hear right now. And then I keep quiet for as long as it takes. And pretty soon they've identified 3 noises. And then I ask them to think of 3 different feelings. By feelings, I might mean, their feet on the floor, or a breeze blowing over them, or a sensation of hot or cold, or something like this. And this simple little exercise, I then ask them to open their eyes. And at least I put something else in their mind, and it will provide some calm. And then I'll say, okay, now I want you to pick a spot on the wall in front of you or on your computer, and I just want you to stare at that fixedly, and don't move a muscle as far as possible. Just stare at it for 2 minutes, and I'll time them. And then I say, how was that? And they'll often say something like, well, it was really weird. So I said, well, what was weird about it? I said, well, the first thing that was weird is that I thought, wow, this is a long 2 minutes. Can't be that long. But then towards the end, it was actually like what you said. I mean, I wasn't aware of anything that was around me. I could hear things, but it was in a bubble. I said, yeah, that's exactly how it should be. And the people that I work with work on live television and radio, and as you know yourselves, there's nothing that can be potentially more stressful than a live performance. And it's how you start a program that has a very strong prediction of which. So in that last sort of 10 or 20 seconds before the red light comes on, to practice a little exercise like that is really helpful, and there are many, many people who do that.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I think I'll turn this over to Rich and see if I know he's probably busting at having some questions. So, Rich, what do you have for Mr. Simpson?
Oh, definitely. And I wanted to just add on to that when, Dr. Stephen, you were talking about, the distractions and everyone wants that instant gratification and, really just to center in and just relax and be here now almost. In another life, I was working as a children's therapist and working with kids in mental and behavioral health. And the one year we had a summer camp for a couple years, and we would do these breathing exercises and, introduce meditation and yoga to the children who had things like ADHD and, all kinds of just other diagnoses. But, you could actually see the difference in behavior on days when we did meditation as opposed to days that we didn't do the meditation. And to see it in a small child who's, bopping around like, all kinds of energy and whatnot. So these are techniques that certainly adults can utilize and experience profound results in their own lives, whether it's personal, professional, whatever. So I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you just said. So thank you for providing that for our listeners. And the other thing that I wanted to say is I really like the introduction of the mantras that you wrote in your chapter. And the one mantra you said, "From this moment forward, I will remember every good thing that happens to me." And you also go on to say, and it's unfortunate, that most people have a brilliant memory for remembering all the things that went wrong, but struggle to think of the many good things that have gone right in their lives. And I'm curious just to get your perspective on why do you think people are just so hard on themselves and it's so easy for them to remember the negatives, but they struggle with remembering the positives and allowing those things to leave a lasting mark on their lives and on their days. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I wish I knew the definitive answer to that question. What I can tell you is that in all of the seminars that I do, I will test it. I will ask people to think, okay, you've got 10 seconds. Tell me 5 great things that have happened to you today. And they struggle. If they can come up with 1 or 2, we've done pretty well. When I say, okay, I want to know 5 things that haven't worked, they say, where do I start? Where do I finish? My day, you just wouldn't want to know what my day's been like. So where does it come from? Well, I'm interested in your experiences working with children, by the way, and so you will know this. When children are playing, they do a lot of role play. If they're playing any kind of sport, they're never going to be them. They're always their superstar, and they'll be giving a running commentary, of how well they're playing and all the rest of it. And you never hear any of these negative comments. But something happens to these kids, and I think it can only come from other people. And I doubt it's come from other kids. I think it's come unwittingly from parents and teachers or figures of authority, because I'm guessing that we're trying our best to encourage the kids, and we point out the things that don't go well, and those things stick. In fact, you're reminding me of when I was working for a corporation, and we were having to do annual assessments on our employees and on ourselves, of course. And nobody likes annual appraisals. And I was told you have to give constructive criticism, but before you do that, you've got to think of at least 5 positive things to say to a person before you can slip in something that they would construe as a negative. So it's not just kids; it's adults as well. And I work with elite performers in sport, and they tend to beat themselves. Well, they do, because they're perfectionists. They have to be. because they're obsessive, and they have to be because they put in their hours and hours of practice. And when things go wrong, some of them can really beat themselves up. And of course, what good does that do to them? All it does is guarantee that their next 5 minutes or their next 40 minutes of play, they've got this cloud over them, which is going to take them away from that lovely warm state known as being in the zone, which is where their peak performance lies. You can't do that if you're beating yourself up.
100%.
Exactly. I remember, and I'm sure you've used this story or a similar story with your clients. I remember my martial arts instructor was, especially when it's some kind of performance that's a routine. And, he said to us the one day, he said, think about that gymnast or, the gymnast that does the bar routine or maybe like the acrobatic dancers in the Olympics and things like that, that they've got their series of routines. And if they fall off the apparatus or if they drop the baton or the ball, what do? Do they, fall on the ground crying that they failed, or do they get back up on the apparatus, or they pick up the ball or the baton and go right back into the performance? And what he was trying to do is tell us, don't harp on that one stumble. Don't harp on that one little failure. And you're absolutely right about it does take a certain mindset to be in that zone. And if you, stumble or fall or whatever, you've got to do what's necessary to get back there. And I'm sure you do a lot of work with these peak performers to make sure that they're training their brain at all times to be able to operate at those high levels, correct?
And that's absolutely correct. And I remember reading an article about Usain Bolt, the 100 meters champion, and he said, you have to learn how to lose before you can learn how to win. And I think the point that he was making is that the more the mistakes, so-called, you make, as long as you handle those in the right way, it will make you a stronger person. And I definitely say to all of my clients, and when things are going wrong and they're feeling dreadful, I say, now look, I guarantee when you look back on this, you will see that we together, in our work together, you will have learned more from this than when things have been going well. Because when things are going well, I don't say very much at all. I just let them get on with it. It's how we deal with adversity, with the things that don't go well, that defines us as champions.
Definitely. And I know I'm going to jump in, Rich, for a second. That's one thing that I was reading about recently was just the fact that if you berate yourself or analyze yourself or critique yourself during your performance, that's the wrong time to do it. You do that during practice. You do that when you're trying something new. And that's the difference between that training mindset and that trusting mindset. And so when it's time to perform, you just perform. You don't go back into practice mode. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people talk about the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is what we do when we're riding a bike. We don't think about it, it happens. If we try and think about it, chances are we'll fall off. Now, if you're beating yourself up, you're doing that with a mind. So that little bit of your brain has taken charge, and that is guaranteed to take you out of the zone. And when players do really well, I always try and get to them as soon as I can, and I say, come on, what was the secret today? And they look at me and their eyes are like dilated because they got these wonderful endorphins flowing through them. They say, I don't really know what it was. It just felt easy today. I guess I just got out of my own way. And when they say something like that, I mean, that's so telling.
Mm-hmm. And I find that even Rich and I do seminars, and we can tell when each of the other of us is getting in our head while we're doing what we should just be doing, because we know it so well, there's no reason to critique it while we're doing it. That's what you do afterwards, or that's what you do when you practice. So that totally makes a lot of sense to me. Now, I have another question, and it's about your 3 H's. And I think that people understand hypnosis in some sense, but I would like a little more information about heart math and, do you say havening?
Yes.
Because I know that here in the States, this is something that isn't used at all, as far as I know, in anything that I've read. I don't know about you, Rich. Have you come across this at all?
No, it was actually pretty new to me as well. And like mine, I wrote it on my notepad to ask Dr. Stephen as well. So I'm all ears.
Okay, well, you can both be very proud because it's your country where these techniques came from. And it doesn't surprise me that you haven't heard about them yet, but they are gaining a lot of traction, and I guarantee that you soon will. And heart math is heart math. The principle of heart math is that we know that there are lots of nerve fibers around the heart. And there are a lot of, obviously, there's a lot of connection between the brain as well, with nerves going backwards and forwards. And it was thought until relatively recently that the brain was controlling the heart. The signals were traveling from top to bottom to the heart. But now we know it's the other way around, that actually there's more control of the brain through the heart. So that if you can get your heart into the right place, your brain will follow. And people have probably known about this for centuries because you'll hear the expression, well, I was really in two minds. You know, my head was telling me to do one thing, but my heart was telling me to do the other. Mm-hmm. And at the risk of complicating it, we also know that there's a lot of nerve cells around the guts and the abdominal organs. And of course, a lot of people will say, well, you know, I had this gut feeling that this was the wrong thing to do. Well, of course, that gut feeling is another word for intuition, and most times people are very wise to follow that. Heart math is used a lot by increasingly by Olympic athletes. A lot of golfers are using it. It's one of the things that I routinely teach my clients or coach my clients. There is a brilliant website. I think it's heartmath.org. Because it's a charitable institution, so a lot of their information is free. It's based upon the concept of heart rate variability. Those are 3 key words. And if you Google those, you'll see a lot in the literature about the importance of heart rate variability. And that is by breathing techniques, getting your heart into the right place, and your brain will follow. Quite difficult to explain. I hope I made a reasonable job of that.
Oh, wonderful. And actually... And I was hoping that is what this was, because I do something, and I call it body wisdom. And it's basically getting people congruent from their head, their heart, and their gut, so that they realize that they really have 3 brains in their body rather than just one. And when those are congruent, things begin to flow and things become easy. So I'm going to look more into this and see kind of if what I've picked up from the things that I've read and started working with clients with it sounds like very much the same thing. So that's very exciting for me.
Excellent. And havening, there's a doctor in New York called Dr. Ron Rudin. He developed this technique about 10 years ago, but he's kept it very quiet while he's done a lot of research. He has thousands of cases under his belt now. And it's only really the last 3 years that it's being widened out to other people. And havening is described as a psychosensory technique. It's a procedure which I don't have time to go through, but it basically involves stroking a person's arms. Now, it could be the client themselves doing it, which is called self-havening, or it could be the therapist. And in a nutshell, this is a primitive reflex. It comes from the reptilian brain. Again, mothers will understand this better than us, because when a child falls over or starts crying, the mother instinctively knows to stroke the person's arms. And you can try yourselves. When you stroke yourself at exactly the right speed and the right amount of pressure, it's a very soothing feeling. And it's obviously stimulating some of these endorphin or brain chemicals. And it's a way to help people to relax, especially people who find it hard to relax. It's especially good for people who've got post-traumatic stress disorder. And you can do wonderful things. If you mix it with a cocktail of hypnosis and counseling and other things, as I say, I find it extremely useful. And again, it's a technique that I'd use with almost any client. They also have a great website, which gives you a much better description of it than I can. And again, I think a lot of the information they give there is free. But you're definitely going to hear more about it for sure.
Excellent. Excellent. Very provocative. So I hope everyone is listening and gets out there and starts introducing themselves to this so that we can introduce others. And this can be something that grows rather than something that gets pushed under the rug, as so many things do. Rich?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, Dr. Stephen, on your website, I see you have a bunch of print books, you have digital and audio books, and you've got some upcoming releases. And I'm curious, and I'm sure the listeners are curious, what are you currently working on, and what can we expect from you in the very near future?
What you can expect from me in the very near future is that I will be working very hard to get 2 books published. The first title to be released is called Poker Genius, and that is using pretty much the 7 secrets that I've described to you, but focused at poker players, because I work with some of the top poker players in the world, and I've been lucky, they've been lucky, because one of the first clients that I worked with who had never won a live event, just 2 weeks after we worked together, he won a huge event and over $1 million. And so that obviously gave me, raised my profile and his. So anyway, it's a book about how the mind secrets of the champions, called Poker Genius. And the second book is called Get Lucky Now, which is the one that I referenced in my chapter. And that will be a more general book, but anybody can use who wants to attract more luck into their life and more success, with lots of examples that they can follow. So I'm excited by both of those books.
Very nice.
Excellent. And as we're getting ready to wrap up, I know you've delivered a lot of action items, you've brought profound insights, and given some really good examples for the listener to learn about and to apply into their daily life. Do you have another just golden nugget that you can share before we end the interview?
Yes. I would say that if anybody asked me what was the quality that I would want more than anything else, as far as performance was concerned, I would say I want intuition. It follows on from some of the things that yourself and Lawrence have been talking about, because intuition to me is a shortcut. It's a processing, a mind processing shortcut that leads us from A to Z a lot more quickly than logic could do. And a lot of successful people will say that they're very intuitive and they're very much in touch with these feelings from wherever they come from, whether they come from their gut, their heart, or their head. Now, there's always a safety warning. Sometimes intuition can be wrong. But when it's right, this can move your performance to a level that you literally haven't dreamt of before.
Excellent.
Right on. Lawrence, do you have anything else for Dr. Stephen?
I'm good. I was writing that down, so that's why I was absent and silent. I'm looking forward to more very, very provocative stuff. I think that we do need to get out of our heads and get into our heart and our intuition and build that. And I'm glad that we have pioneers. I would consider you a pioneer because it's a new generation. It's a new way that people are thinking, and they need to step backwards a little bit and maybe slow down and look at this incredible information that, like you said, it's a mind processing shortcut. So I just want to thank you for opening up that box for people who are interested in exploring the out of the ordinary to make their lives extraordinary. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome, and thank you to you both, as I said, for having me on this show. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I wish I'd had more time, not to talk about myself, but to have been able to talk about more of the work that both of you do, because I think you are both pioneers as well, and the world is a better place with people like you.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For our listeners that want to learn more about Dr. Stephen, his work, and his books, especially the two books that are coming out, go to drstephensimpson.com. That's www.drstephensimpson.com. drstephensimpson.com. There's the link in the show notes if you didn't get a chance to write that down. And you can research Dr. Simpson in what he's doing. He's got his blog, he's got videos, all sorts of resources that you can learn more about his work. You can order his books right there. And if you want to learn how to bring more luck into your life, I would highly recommend going to his website, drstephensimpson.com. He's got the two books coming out. Like I said, videos, resources, the blog, all sorts of learning tools. And it's certainly going to help you, the listener, and people that you know in your life. Dr. Stephen, thank you so much for spending time with us today, and I hope you have a glorious rest of your day, and we look forward to speaking with you personally very, very soon. So thank you very much, Dr. Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you, and may you both and your listeners attract far more luck into your lives, because you all deserve it.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you just heard from our guest from the UK, Dr. Stephen Simpson. We're going to go to a quick commercial break, and we'll be back with our show wrap-up. So stay tuned. We'll be back in 1 minute. Hey, friends. Rich Perry here, and I want to thank you for making the time to listen today. Lawrence Pipkin and I are honored to be a part of this amazing global community, founded by Jim Britt and Jim Lutz, and we're proud to serve you, our listeners, as the host of the Change Book Radio Show. We know you're interested in personal development. That's why you're listening today, and you can count on us to deliver a premium platform for the many co-authors from around the globe to share their unique insights, stories, and strategies that will inspire you to create marvelous changes in your own life. Remember to join the Change Book public Facebook group and connect personally with your favorite co-authors. And if you've benefited from listening to this show, then we want to hear from you. Go to iTunes and leave a written review and the star rating you feel the Change Book Radio Show deserves. And please share this show with your friends. And as a loyal listener, we have a special gift for you. Go to our website, vortexmastermind.com, and download our free trainings that will show you how to bankroll your mind for success. Each training module provides exercises that you can apply in your business and life to start seeing your own fantastic results. On behalf of Lawrence Pipkin and myself, Rich Perry, thanks and be excellent. Now, back to the Change Book Radio Show. All right, everybody, we're back. Lawrence, how you feeling after that interview? I know I was on the edge of my seat listening to Dr. Stephen and what he had to say, and it really sounded like a lot of the things that he's doing really just crosses over, and there was a lot of synergy, and, I loved what he had to say in his chapter, and just learning more about some of these tools and techniques from him during our interview.
I thought it was amazing. I think that it's nice that even though something starts here, sometimes it has to go somewhere else to become better and then come back and then be revered. I hope that people are listening. I think, unfortunately, the people who listen to our show are already in this mindset. So go find those people who aren't in our mindset and share. If you could walk up to somebody and say, hey, would you like a tip that's going to help give you a shortcut from A to Z, or if you're from the UK, from A to Z? I'm sure that they would say yeah, and, share and give people the resources so that they can make their lives better. And so I loved the show. I thought it was amazing. I'm looking forward to his books, definitely.
Absolutely, and I certainly agree with you, and that was very much a shocker in that they started here in America, and I'm talking about Havening, that, it started right there in New York City, and I'm from Pennsylvania, and I hadn't heard of it. However, when Dr. Stephen was talking about it, I was like, wow, I remember my mom doing that, rubbing my arm when I was a little kid if I fell off the bike or whatever. And as you know, Lawrence, I used to work in children's mental and behavioral health, working predominantly with early behavior or early development. So I was dealing with kids that are 2, 3, 4 years old, especially in a daycare setting, when we used to do that for the kid. If the kid got hurt somehow, whether it was physical, emotional, when the child was crying, you kind of embraced them and you rubbed them on the arms. And as Dr. Stephen was saying that, I was like, wow, we used to do that. And, I didn't know at the time that I was doing something other than just comforting that child. And it just really made sense. And I was like, wow, there was that very positive response, and it did calm that child. So I'm certainly going to look more into that for my own work and just to share the good news with others.
And just as a disclaimer, and Rich needs to hear this, don't just stroke any stranger's arm. Make sure that you get their permission first. I don't want to have to follow along and pick Rich up off the pavement. So use discretion.
Yes, I will use discretion. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you.
Got to keep you on track.
Got to keep me on track. Got to keep it light, So before we get out of here, I do want to remind everybody that you have a golden opportunity to connect with Dr. Stephen Simpson and all the other Change book authors. Lawrence, and I know that we've got over 200 co-authors from around the globe. I mean, I'm from Pennsylvania. Lawrence, you're from Texas. We had Dr. Stephen as our guest today. He's calling in from the UK. We've got 200 plus co-authors from around the globe. We're from authors from over 20 countries. And the golden ticket for you listeners to connect with these leaders personally is by joining our public Facebook group, the Change Book Facebook group. And all you have to do is just go onto Facebook, look under groups. It's the Change Book, and it's free to join. It's a free public group. You'll have the opportunity to connect with founders Jim Britt and Jim Lutz and all the co-authors from around the globe. And it'll be a golden opportunity for you to, ask questions and find out what was inside their head when they were writing that. Or maybe you're even interested to learn more and buy the next book or the next video or the next program that they have to offer. So I would certainly recommend going to Facebook. We're all on Facebook these days, sometimes a little bit more than we should be. So go on and join the Change Book public Facebook group. and it'll be a great opportunity for you to connect with all the co-authors in the entire series from around the globe. So other than that, Lawrence, do you have any closing remarks, comments, statements, or insights that you want to share?
Well, I would just say after listening to today's radio show, trust your intuition, see where it leads. Be mindful, be in the moments, and click those things off, all that tech, and see where that gets you through the day. And I think the one of the biggest things that I took away that I hope people remember is remember all the happy times. Sit back and remember happy times. And I think that's amazing stuff. So that's all I've got. I thought it was a wonderful, wonderful interview, and just as they all are. So please join us each and every week.
Each and every week on Wednesday, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as a closing reminder, if you want to connect personally with Lawrence or myself, then I would love to invite you to our website, and we're going to give you some free training for your leadership team or even for you as a person and professional. So go to our website, vortexmastermind.com, and you'll be able to download some of the live training calls that we have from our Bankrolling Your Mind series. It's a great opportunity. You can download them, put them on CD, or just keep them on your iPad or computer, listen to them, and then if you connect with us, we'll even send you a couple resources as well so that you can do the exercises that we talk about in the live training calls. So that's all we have. On behalf of Lawrence Pipkin and myself, Rich Perry, I want to thank you for joining us today on the Change Book Radio Show. Be sure to tune in each Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and go to iTunes and look up the Change Book Radio Show. And if you love what you're listening to and you love the guests, you love the insights, you love the strategies, go ahead and leave a star rating that you feel we deserve and a written review. Help us boost our rankings a little bit and be able to reach more people. Once again, on behalf of Lawrence Pipkin and myself, Rich Perry, I'd like to thank you for listening to the show, and see you next week. Thanks, and be excellent.